Very much, Sharks, and it's good hearing from the French players, of course, in the French crowd. Fnatic losing the first game of the All-Star Invitational. We were particularly excited and interested to see how the lane matchups, the lane swaps, the 4v0s, the 2v1s, the 3v, the laning was going to go. Let's start this one with Monte. Talk to me about the lane swaps, the early game. How do you think it went for both of the teams involved?
Well, we did see something that was pretty common in the West right there, which was a two-wave push coming in from Fnatic. And really by two-wave push, I mean they push on the second wave after taking a single buff instead of going for both buffs and then pushing on the third wave, which is a cannon minion wave. So that combined with the fact that Fnatic had the bottom side of the map for their 2v1 meant that they were able to push down the tower very quickly, whereas the tower went down about 7 minutes up top for OMG. So they had that initial advantage. And I know Krepo was talking about, while we were sitting here on the desk, something that he noticed as well as part of that lane swap process in terms of the defense from OMG.
Yeah, first I want to point out, I feel like Fnatic had the better strategy. I'm a really big fan of the 4v0 push, because at the moment Fnatic hit this tier 2 tower, OMG was still at the top, sieging that tier 1 tower, and they were unsure, and they want to take it slow, because they're used to go 1 tower for 1 trade in China, and then just bounce the way back of that first tower. If Fnatic, in my opinion, decided to push down the second tower, they would have had a big advantage. Instead, they ended up sending their top laner back, and eventually he got poked down and he got dove. And that's actually another mistake that happened, but then on OMG side, and I think we even have a replay of that, so if you can get that on your screen real quick. We can point out, like, the initial mistake in the lane swaps, in my opinion, was on OMG side. Then Fnatic made a mistake not switching back. But now, in this situation, we have SOAS under the tower. Cyanide came to help him, a little late. But now OMG is going to look to dive. But in my opinion, they should just burst this tower down, then switch to SOAS. But they get really greedy. And if you see, Cyanide's playing really well here. He's just staying in front of SOAS, making sure no hook can connect. And if we roll the clip, yeah, they're trying to get him. Nice stun by SOAS. Hook misses. Alan goes in, they did get the first blood, but then you feed Kha'Zix 2 kills for free. And this is where I really feel like OMG dropped the ball. Imagine if they did not do this and they just played solid, they would have won the game flat out.
Well, they did win the game flat out, luckily.
Flatter outer.
Flat outerer, flat outerer. As the game progressed, Freak, talk to me about what your opinion was on OMG, because in my mind, they were playing very aggressive. They had a lot of rotations around the map, regardless of whether they were ahead or behind on gold. What was your take on their performance?
So OMG played the way I think we expect OMG to play. They don't as much focus on turrets as they focus on ways to fight their opponents, right? They came with a team fight composition. They're obviously focused on Jinx getting ahead and getting massive, which is part of the reason they push slowly, as smart as that may be or not. But they look for ways to pick fights. And one of the big reasons you saw that was like, Fnatic went for a really dumb dragon attempt, right? And OMG just like shows up and kills them at it, right? Dragon number 1 back 10 minutes in, OMG says, we're better 5v5, we'll show up for dragon. They're forcing team fights.
Very quickly to interrupt, I'm sorry, but I did actually prepare some stats on this one. 5 out of 5 dragons in this particular game. They secured 70 out of 74 dragons in the LPL over 28 games.
Yeah.
Over 28 games, OMG had secured 70 out of 74 dragons. That is an incredible stat, and it showed through. They had complete control. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's how OMG controls the map. It's not pulling in minion waves and going for an outer turret. It's, we'll just take every dragon. Time and again, they take every single dragon, right? And that's how they kind of push themselves forward. Now, when I said earlier in the pre-game predictions, like I hope they don't pick Nidalee, is because they just go for dragons regardless of if it's smart or not. And when they pick Nidalee, they need to poke first, but they don't do that. They'll just show up and start fighting. And if you give them champions that can go head first, like Lulu, Shyvana, they have that.
Yeah, and speaking of not poking first, on the second dragon of the game at about 16, 17 minutes, we did see, I think, Fnatic play contrary to what their comp was good at. If we take a look, and we look at Nidalee, Lucian, Aurelia, this is a comp and Karma, this is a comp that's really set up for a large mid-game power spike. And the late game's not where you want to go. You also have great siege with the Nidalee Spears and the Lucian ult in the mid-game, but they chose to go for that second dragon instead of just rushing down. If you're looking for a weakness in OMG, a team that is dedicated to taking these dragons, go ahead and just rush their lanes and try and take their towers while they kind of mill around dragon, and ward your flanks deep into the territory so you know if they're coming in on you from the sides.
Yeah, to touch on that a little bit more, all the wave clear OMG really had was Lulu and then a rocket from Jinx. She pretty much had to build static shift if they wanted to go into the extended like wave clear scenario. But exactly like Monte said, go for the towers. And if you still want your dragon so desperately, then push the tower and fall back into the area, clean the wards, and make them walk into the spears. Fnatic lost that fight because they desperately tried to get OMG's attention. to walk them. But the OMG's like, well, we're close enough to just kill you, so we'll do that.
So we've been talking quite a lot about this game. We've been discussing, which team did well. We've been discussing the replays. We haven't heard from the only member of the analyst desk that voted for Fnatic. Condolences, buddy, but
okay.
what happened to your team?
Well, personally, I think already in Champ Select, they lost it. They didn't straight up lose the game in Champ Select, but they didn't exactly help themselves. Against a team like OMG who loves to team fight, it's very risky to pick a poke comp, especially because once you actually fall behind, if you don't do anything in the mid game, like Monte pointed out, it's very, very hard to do anything. You can then argue, yeah, sure, poke comp makes you avoid the team fights. In that case, it can work. But because OMG took control of the map and because the lack of wards from Fnatic as well, when they were behind, they just could never do anything to get back in the game. And I think they need to fix up the Champ Select for the next game.
OMG has shown some weaknesses though too, like on the map. If Fnatic would have actually played their composition well, I think they could have opened up this game well enough to basically say, OMG, yeah, you want a team fight, but we'll never let you. We'll just poke you down every time. So I don't really agree with the fact that they lost it in Champ Select. Given the way they played it, I do agree that they lost it in Champ Select. If Fnatic had better strategy coming in, they could have picked this comp. However, they seem to rely a lot on lane power and still want to skirmish. Then I agree fully that they needed to pick more team fight composition.
Soaz ran a little scared to me as well, I thought, Freak, what do you think?
Yeah, ultimately, I think you're right that Fnatic had a lot of hooks in that OMG kind of gave away. The one big thing to me, actually, is that you had this lane swap situation, meaning you've got a dedicated, isolated 1v1 in the mid lane between Peke and Xiang. And Peke won that. He outfarmed him in a as Nidalee, which you're never supposed to outfarm in 1v1 like ever in pretty much any matchup. And he did freaking great. So Peke is obviously on the up and up. Xiang, I want to see more from him.
I just want to quickly add in, I'm going to take over the stats man role, I think, for this event. Talking about that, just to highlight some numbers, Peke managed to get 90 CS in the first 10 minutes of the game in comparison to the 74 of Xiang. That's Lulu versus Nidalee. At 20 minutes, however, the roles had evened out. Xiang was on 160 at the 20-minute mark to 159 of Peke. So I agree with you, the laning phase was great, especially in a matchup that you shouldn't have. But again, once Fnatic lost control, they really lost a grasp of this entire match.
But another thing was also Reckless on Lucian. He actually got pretty far ahead in farm because he stayed in the solo lanes to farm, but he was very, very slow to actually move out and help. The first blue buff that goes over to OMG, he stays in the bottom lane to farm. Next time again, OMG pushes the mid tower. Reckless once again stays in the bottom lane, comes in way too late, and the tower is already gone. So while Peke did very well, Reckless got a lot of farm, but then he didn't use it to anything.
Well, very quickly, Monty.
Yeah, it's just, again, missing that timing window. And also we saw that with Soaz's itemization. Very late Trinity Force on a lane swap to Aurelia. And so that really didn't help out his situation too. Was unable to make up the plays to set up the sieges.
So as a final note to Fisher, what does Fnatic need to do to bounce back from this? Is it in-game decision-making, or do you think it's picks and bans?
Well, again, Krepo had a very good point beforehand. The comp could have worked for them. So in that case, it would be the in-game decisions, saying, we got a lead now, we won out on the lane swap, what do we do now? The fast decisions were a little bit off for them, and OMG just took full advantage, and once they got a hit, they never gave Fnatic a chance.
We'll see if they do make that work for us. It is time for a quick break, and when we return, it'll be time for Game 2 of the Invitational between the Taipei Assassins and SK Telecom T1K. As we head out,